Everyone seems to be looking for that magic pill that's going to fix all of their health issues. But the reality is that lasting health comes from building the right foundation first. Perhaps you've tried supplements, gadgets, advanced therapies, hoping for a quick fix for whatever your health issues might be. But the truth is, long-lasting health cannot be built on shortcuts. It requires a sound foundation, and until you've reached that, you will never be able to reach the level of health that you're hoping for. In today's video, I want to break down the 5 components that really lay the foundation for long-lasting health. And I want to explain why you can't skip those in order to have some quick fix with regard to long-lasting health. 3 of them we're all very familiar with, and we'll talk about somewhat in this video. Proper diet, proper exercise, proper mindset. But there's another 2 components of that foundation of health that are absolutely required in order to build the level of health that you're looking for. Together, we're going to build that full foundation of our health in this video today. I'm Dr. Jason Saunders, and although I primarily talk about hyperbaric on this channel, that's just one of the ways that I've helped patients for over 20 years in practice. In my opinion, there are 5 foundational and required components to building long-lasting health for all humans. And there is not a single one that can substitute for the other one. That's critically important. I mentioned earlier 3 of them. Proper diet, or really what I mean is proper nourishment, exercise, or what I really mean is a proper way of moving our body, mindset, which also includes how we manage our stress, how we future pace our goals, and how we maintain a positive outlook throughout our entire life. The next one is oxygen, fueling so many of the systems that are required in the other 3 foundational components, and light, also being a fuel for those other 3 foundational components. What do I mean where you can't substitute them? There's absolutely no way that you're ever going to exercise your way through a poor diet or through poor nutrition. And there's absolutely no way that you're going to eat your way through a sedentary lifestyle. Likewise, mindset, oxygen, and light are playing very specific roles, each one stimulating very specific pathways that are independent of one another. Yes, on some level, they all come together and interact with one another, but really they have to be addressed individually and they have to be nailed individually inside of our life to build a foundation of health where all the other health-related strategies that we may choose to use in our life will build upon, but again, not in lieu of, but in addition to this foundation. So why do I believe that these are the foundational components, non-negotiable, for building long-lasting health? Because these are the 5 components that are irreplaceable. There's not a substitute for one another, and there's not a substitute anywhere else to get these components. In other words, your cells need to be nourished. They need all of the ingredients, all the vitamins and minerals from your diet in order to provide the sustenance for those cells to behave properly, to grow, to repair, and to respond to environmental stimuli. Although we look at exercise in terms of aerobic capacity and strength, I would argue that exercise is actually a signaling mechanism for building resilience inside your body. Long-lasting health comes from adversity, and exercise creates a level of cell signaling from an adversity standpoint to push the resilience, the strength, the resolve of the organism that is doing the exercise. I believe that exercise is actually providing a nutrient to the nervous system, to the body, that is irreplaceable. You cannot substitute exercise with some sort of pill or potion. Exercise is a required activity for that level of cell signaling. Mindset is also a cell signaling activity. Building and maintaining a healthy mindset. Again, learning how to tolerate adversity, even on a mindset and an emotional level, will build resilience, will build your health long term. How we handle stress, how we handle setbacks, maintaining a positive mental attitude throughout all the challenges of life will help to build a healthier, more long-lasting, and more sustained level of health. Oxygen, absolutely a requirement for human function. If you don't believe me, hold your breath for the rest of this video. We need oxygen. We need to replace our oxygen every minute of every day, even just to have this conversation, let alone to heal to recover, to manage our inflammation levels, to improve our performance? How about in order to break down our food, you need oxygen? How about in order to exercise, you need oxygen? Oxygen is part of the fuel system required for all cellular function. And then there's light. So many pathways inside our body are light sensitive or light driven. Different frequencies of light will push different cellular pathways, different cell signaling pathways that allow us to produce certain vitamins in our body, produce the energy in our body required for sustaining all the other systems that we're trying to build. And the proper amount and the proper frequencies of light will activate healing pathways and pathways that are required for proper and appropriate cellular function. Many of us have used other therapies, sauna, cold plunge, different vitamins and supplements that we can take to try to shift our physiology one way or another. I use those and I think that they're terrific. But to me, those are in addition to or filling in certain gaps because of a lifestyle or a decision or an environmental factor that we may or may not have control over. But they're not requirements necessarily. These 5 fundamental components are required for healthy function in any of us. Developing and building a plan around each one of these 5 components will help to develop a plan of resilience and true health that the other strategies that we may choose to implement over time will be a catalyst to build upon. But none of those 5 can really be removed. The other reason that these 5 components are considered foundational is because of the depth and breadth that each one of these impacts our body systemically. In other words, you could take a certain vitamin because that's going to trigger a very specific pathway, but proper nourishment affects the entire system systemically. Proper movement and variation of your movement will also stimulate your body in a completely systemic way. Mindset, even though we're talking about mental and emotional balance and control, our mindset has a systemic impact over our entire body. Oftentimes, you can tell how somebody's feeling by the way they're carrying themselves physically. Oxygen, other than the red blood cells that carry oxygen, every other cell in your body requires oxygen for all of the different functions that those cells do. The impact is systemic. And the same with light. Light triggers certain pathways in every single one of our cells systemically. So not any one of these foundational components are targeted. They are systemic components to long-lasting health. To me, the next level are going to be thermoregulating therapies like hot and cold, and frequency therapies or electromagnetic therapies that are only one step above that foundational level. Because again, these are also systemic therapies. So using sauna, using cryotherapy, using cold plunge or ice baths trigger an additional layer of a systemic response inside the body, helping balance and regulate the nervous system, helping to balance and regulate the immune system. All of our cells also function on a balance of an electrochemical signaling. Using frequency-based modalities like PEMF as one example can help regulate the electrochemical gradients of our cells, improving cellular performance. Once we leave that level and transcend up again, we're starting to get into higher and higher levels of much more targeted and specific pathways. This is where we start adding supplement therapy, IV therapy, adding peptides. These are also incredibly powerful strategies as part of a long-term, long-lasting health program. But rather than these large systemic impacts, these are going to be much more specific pathways that we're trying to elicit a very specific cellular response. To me, the foundational components need to be more or less day in and day out from a long-term plan. And as we transcend up the pyramid to these more targeted therapies, these are therapies that may be in and out of our life based on certain circumstances or certain health conditions or certain health goals that we have, where we are pulsing very specific ingredients, trying to activate very targeted pathways. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people have this pyramid upside down. They're taking vitamins, they're doing IVs, they're taking peptides, but They're mixing and matching a variety of different, very specific and very targeted pathways without having that strong foundation built. And then they're wondering why they only get temporary benefit or temporary relief from this very specific and targeted program. And then they add a different set of supplements, IVs, and peptides for another short-term boost of impact. When we have our triangle right side up and we have that foundation that's really strong, that will set the stage for allowing these other more targeted therapies to be more impactful, to get better results, and ultimately to build that long-lasting health that we're all looking for. If you've got that entire foundation already built, that's terrific. And now you can start building the higher levels of the triangle that we're talking about. But if you're working on that foundation, we really need to start picking one at a time and build it until we find a easy and sustainable way to keep that as part of your life, and then move on to the next foundational component. It's very difficult to try to build all 5 of those foundations simultaneously. And quite honestly, I can't tell you that one is definitively more important than the other. My opinion is pick the one that you think is the easiest. Start there and make those changes, because if you make those changes and you have success in that area of your life, it's going to make the next one easier for you to tackle. If you start with the one that you think is the most important, but the hardest one for you to change, you're going to struggle and potentially fail, leading you to not being able to take action on the other ones. Having success and building momentum is really the key to a sustainable, long-term approach to building your health. We've done previous videos getting a little deeper into the weeds on exercise and on proper diet. So if those are the areas that you're wanting to start with, we'll put a link to those videos in the description below. We're going to start talking about the oxygen and light side, the 2 less obvious but foundational components right now. So as you know on this channel, I talk a lot about hyperbaric oxygen, but when I'm talking about oxygen as a foundational ingredient, it doesn't have to be hyperbaric. Most people don't even know how to breathe properly. Learning how to relax, learning how to take diaphragmatic breaths, learning how not to just take shallow sniffing breaths from the top of your lungs, but really relaxed belly breaths will help you deliver a more sustainable and consistent amount of oxygen to your cells and tissues. A step further, developing a meditative and a breathwork practice where you can really build even greater levels of oxygenation for free is another great way to develop the oxygenation side of this foundation. That being said, there are times in our lives, or challenges, especially in our lives, or even issues that we may come across where we need something a little bit stronger. And in those cases, a tool like hyperbaric oxygen could be a necessary component to actually drive the oxygenation side of building and driving the oxygenation component of this foundation of health. As far as light is concerned, many of us know that we are surrounded by artificial light most of the day. Fluorescent lighting, LED lighting, all of the blue light from the devices that are in front of us day in and day out. On top of that, many of us have been taught to avoid natural sources like the sun, or when you're being exposed to sun, to make sure that you're covered in SPF 50 because of how dangerous the sun is. I believe that we've taken that advice to an extreme now, where now we're also afraid of the sun. Meanwhile, the light and the energy that radiates from the sun literally nourishes our body. It nourishes our cells, and avoiding it at all costs is actually contributing to a lot of our health concerns, health issues that so many people are struggling with right now. We need to rebuild our relationship with that ball of fire that's in the sky. It is not all bad. Should you be lathering up with baby oil and sitting on your roof with a reflector so that you can burn your skin on some regular basis? That is not what I'm saying. That's the other extreme. But fearing the sun and hiding from the sun at all costs is coming with great health consequences. Learning how to have healthy exposures to sunlight is a requirement for long-lasting health. Exposing your body earlier in the day, exposing your body later in the afternoon. Avoiding peak midday sun might still be an appropriate action, but I can promise you healthy exposures to sunlight is incredibly important for your health. Also, reducing some of the toxicity of light that you're getting is equally important for long-term health. Taking screen breaks, putting red light filters on your screens, using blue light blocking glasses while you're using screens will help reduce the amount of artificial and blue light that you're receiving. And all of those strategies are either free or incredibly inexpensive. But we also now have modalities and tools that we could use to help us get appropriate amounts of light if getting proper amounts of natural light is just not accessible to you. And so using near infrared and infrared saunas, using high dose red light panels or beds will help supplement some of the red light that you would be getting from sunlight and natural exposures. And so in today's healthcare world, we do have tools to increase our oxygen levels, to increase the healthy types and frequencies of light that we need in our life to create the health that we want. And those could be used to supplement the natural ways of getting oxygen or the natural ways of getting light when we can't get enough of those in our environment or from those natural sources. And finding a way to balance the natural sources with some of these modalities is a great way to make sure that you're getting the most out of those two pillars of the health foundation that you need to establish the long-term health that you're looking for. So I'm not telling you to throw away your supplements and your peptides or even to change anything that you're necessarily doing on a specific or targeted program with regard to your health. But what I am encouraging you to do is evaluate where you stand on each of those 5 foundational components and start building a more robust and significant plan so that you have a strong foundation. And then once you build that strong foundation, you should reevaluate those specific and targeted pieces that you're using, because it's very likely that you will need less or a different approach once that foundation is built. I hope this helps shift your paradigm on what it means to build long-lasting health and where some of these tools, modalities, and strategies all fit together in a sequence to really build the health that you're looking for. As always, I appreciate your time and attention, and we'll see you on the next video. Maybe you just bought your first chamber, or you're thinking about buying your first chamber. Maybe that's a home use chamber, or perhaps you're considering offering hyperbaric inside your clinic. And if you're anything like me when I first started, you're realizing how much information there is out there, and you're concerned, are you doing this the right way? Are you being safe? How am I going to utilize this hyperbaric chamber in the most effective way possible? If you're just getting involved in hyperbarics and you're looking for an introductory training program, the Basic Hyperbaric Technician program is exactly what you need. In this course, we're going to cover how does hyperbaric work, why does hyperbaric work, what makes hyperbaric oxygen such a unique therapy, what mechanisms of action are taking place, what are the benefits of hyperbaric, both short and long term, and what types of indications are appropriate to utilize hyperbaric for. We will also help build your confidence, not only in how to utilize the therapy, but how to talk about this therapy with patients or with other healthcare providers that may not understand hyperbarics the way you will once you finish this course. So if you're ready to dive in, click the link below this video and let's get started.